Hello, my front-end friend. Last week I looked at building the form that we see right here, and this week we're going to be looking at adding in the validation that we see here. And yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be using some JavaScript for this, which not too often that happens on this channel, but here we go. We're going to dive into writing some JavaScript. Just really quickly, if you do want to follow along with this, but you don't want to follow last week's tutorial, the starting code that we have here is available, linked down in the description. There is one change I've made since that last video, if you did do that one with me, which is I've just added these error message spans. So yeah, every form group has an error message span in there that we're going to be doing some things with, well, adding the error messages in as you'd expect. The one thing here is on the field set, I didn't put it inside of the form groups. We have an error message all the way down at the bottom here. And just really quickly, the reason we're doing that is I have these here grouped in a field set. And we're going to have to handle these a little bit differently, actually. So for the very beginning here, I am going to take this field set and comment it out, just because radio buttons do present a small change in how we're going to have to do things. But otherwise than that, every form group has an error message in it, and there's nothing too fancy here. If you're doing this with your own form, you just need to have a form, which reminds me, I have a thing here that I also added, which is this novalidate here. And I'll talk about what that means, but you just need a form with your things in it that you need that all have like the right types of inputs, and you should be good to go. And just importantly, I do have required on most of these. So before I put that novalidate back here, I am going to save this, and we're going to jump on over, and I'm going to pull up the code right here that we're going to be looking at, and I'm going to leave it over here now so it's not behind my head at all. And just really fast, if I hit submit, or let's uncheck that, or let's refresh everything and hit submit, and you can see please fill out this field. And so if I fill out that field, then I hit submit, it says fill this one out. And these are because they're required. Once I do that, it just keeps on going. If I put an invalid one, it tells me there's a mistake with my email address. I did some symbols there. Okay, there we go. These are all valid. Then I can come here. I still need to check this box if I want to proceed, and then I can submit, and it would submit my form. These are all the native error fields coming from the browser. I haven't done anything here, and there is a way to be able to update the text in here, and I'm going to put a link to an MDM article that has information on how to do that if you'd rather just update these. But there's a few issues with using the built-in browser one. If somebody translates your page, those fields will not be translated, for one. And the second thing, or the second problem, is there's no way to style these. Every browser might present them a little bit differently. Maybe that's not a big deal, but if you want to have your own styling, or you have to because it's your job, then we can't rely on that built-in validation. So to get started in this, what we're going to do is let's come and we have a little bit of JavaScript. Oh, I did make one other change here. I did linked to a form.js file that I added in here. So we're going to write some JavaScript in there, and I am going to come back on this form and put the novalidate here, validate, which just means we're not going to use that native validation that was there. So if I just put this and I hit submit, it's actually submitting the form, which we don't want to happen. So putting this here, make sure that you are doing some sort of validation. And speaking of validation, before we get into it, I do want to mention we're only talking about client-side validation right now. It's really important that you have server-side validation for things as well. But the first step along the way is client-side validation, which goes a long way into making sure, like, you don't want to be sending requests if you don't have to the server. So we can make sure, especially through a better user experience, because the most annoying thing in the world is once you hit the submit button, then you find out you have 4 errors. I like having that validation as the user's going through the form. So we're going to be seeing how we can do all of that. So to start with, I'm going to jump over here where I have a little bit of stuff done. We're really going to walk our way through and get a little bit fancier step by step. But you can see here I have a const of form to grab my form using a query selector. And for now, we're not going to keep this, but it just keeps it simple at the beginning, is I am just getting my first name field by getting the element by ID and getting the F name. So it's just this one. So we're going to start with that, and then we're just going to slowly make things a little bit better. So you can see here I have this function of validate field. We're going to put in the logic here of seeing if the field is valid or not. And then we're going to when we submit, we're going to go through the fields and check them. So to start with, when we're going to pass the field into here, and the easiest thing, rather than checking if it's valid, is actually to check if it's not valid. So we can say if, and then put an exclamation point and say field.validity dot valid. And the word validity here, this is coming from, I'm going to get the name wrong, it's an API that's in the browser that checks the form fields. It's actually what's currently, or that native implementation that we saw at the very beginning. This is the same thing where the browser is able to check if the field is valid or not just by doing take the element, see if it's valid, or the validity, and whether it's valid or not. So if the validity is not valid, and the reason it's not valid is I have this, we're going to try something after too. I just thought of while I'm writing this, it might be a little bit, it's not simpler, but we're going to try something else. But let's just say console log field is invalid. Nothing too fancy. If it's invalid, well, what do we want to do? We're going to come here, and I'm actually for now going to write return false, and you'll see why I'm returning false a little bit later on. And then outside of here, so if it actually is valid, we can do a console log of field is valid, and then we'll return true. And so that exists. Now we just actually have to use it. So to be able to do that, we're going to use this event listener down here where when we submit our form, we want to now do something. So we're going to listen for when somebody submits it. So that means when they click the submit button. And the very first thing we want to do is, you'll see I have my function here, the function with the E. And it's really important with this function, the first thing we're going to do, and we're going to, so the E here is short for event. So we're looking at the event, and I'm actually going to do an e.prevent default. And the reason we want to do this is we saw before, because we turned off our novalidate, if we have the novalidate there, it's just going to submit. So we want to prevent that from happening. We're saying don't actually submit. So if I do that and I come here and I write something and I hit submit, you see nothing is actually happening. Whereas if we take this off and I put something here and I hit submit, it's actually submitting that form. So it's really important. No, it's not actually submitting anywhere. It's just getting submitted, but it's really important we have that prevent default on to prevent anything from actually happening, and we're gonna have to do that submission ourselves once we've checked for the validity of it. Next up, we're gonna come in with a const is valid, and we're gonna say equals validate field, and in here for name, I'm just going to be grabbing that first one. So that first one was our first name field that we had here. Again, we're keeping things very simple to start with. So we're saying validate this field, and that's going to give us the is valid. That's why I put the true and false here. So when we do this, it's going to be is valid false or is valid true. And then what we can do is say if is valid, we want to do something. So for now, let's just say console log submitting, and else we can do a console log, we'll just say error for now, just to see if all of this is actually working or not. So let's open up our DevTools in the console, scroll all the way down, hit submit, field is invalid, and we're getting the error right there. So the field that we checked is invalid, and that gives us this console log of error. Or we can come in and let's come here and actually put something, and because it's just an input type of text, if we go and take a look, it's just an input type of text. So anything here whatsoever, could just even be one character, then we can submit that, field is valid, and then it's going to submit the form. Now it's not actually submitting anything. The name's still here. It hasn't done anything because we're going to have to do that ourselves. But at least we have that, things are on the right track there. Now we're eventually going to want this to go through all the fields, not just the one field. So we could actually improve this a little bit up here. Just for our own sake, just because, it'd be good to know what field is the invalid field. So here we could just say field is invalid, and then we could say this, and then put a comma, and then just write field here. And if we do it like this, when we open up our console, and now if I submit, we're getting field is invalid, and it's showing me which one is actually the one that's invalid. So I wouldn't keep these in here, obviously, once we go to production, but if we're running into issues along the way, and things are giving us the wrong thing, or just to make sure things are working the way we're expecting them to, this is a nice way just to sort of find what the culprit might be. And you could do the same thing here if you wanted, field is valid, and put field, and it will tell you which one is valid as well. For now, I'm only going to keep the invalid ones up here. So, one thing we could do is do first name field, and then we could have our last name field, and then we could have our email, and We don't want to do that though, right? That would be a little bit silly. I mean, if you had 3 things in your form, I guess that's fine. But then any change you make to your form, we don't want to do that. We just want to get everything right away. So the easier way to do that means that we can actually come in here and I can take this first name field away. We don't need it anymore. The only thing we need is the entire form. And then over here where I did the is valid, we're going to change this and we're going to say that this is true as a default. And it's important we do this as a true as a default. I was first thinking I'd want it as a false, and we sort of turn each one on as we're going through. But it's actually easier, in my opinion anyway, to do it the other way around, because for true, you need everything to be true. So we sort of have to check. It just makes it a bit more complicated. Whereas if one of them is false, we don't want to submit the form. So we keep it true. And then as soon as one thing along the way hits as being false, then we go, oh, we're switching this variable here over to false, and because it's becoming false, the whole thing just falls apart. And because we are going to be changing it, that means we can't have it as a const, because const are constants, they can't change. So I'm going to change this one over to a let instead. So let, it will say is valid is true, and then if we run into an issue, we'll switch it over. The next thing we're going to do is now we can use a const of fields, and we can say this is equal to our form.query selector. And I want to do query selector all, and we need to get all of the inputs, and we want to get all of the, well, if we had multiple, we'd want them all, the text area. And in this case, I only have inputs and text areas. I don't have anything else. If you had selects and other things, you would need to make sure that you're getting everything that you're checking here. So yeah, just as a quick little extra there, make sure you don't leave out any of the fields that you do want to be checking. Then what we can do is come in here and say fields, and we're going to do a for each loop over all of the fields. So we can say for each one of those fields, we want to do something. And what do we want to do? So this is just an arrow function. So grab each one of the fields we're using that, and then we can do whatever we want with it. So let's just make sure this is even working. We're going to say console log, and I'm going to put some backticks here because we're going to say checking, and then we'll be able to check the field that we want to look at. So we can do this, I think it's called interpolation. I know with CSS it is. I might be getting that name wrong. I'm not a JavaScript guy. We can say checking field type. Actually, I'm not going to do type. I was going to do something a bit more. We can just say field name because all of our fields have names on them, and then we'll know exactly which field we're checking. So checking field name. And I'm trying to think, let's just leave it like that and see what, yeah, let's just leave it at that. And we'll open our console back up. I don't know why I keep closing the console, but now if I submit it, checking first name, checking last name, checking email, checking message. And at the very end here, we have the submitting coming through. And the reason for that is our is valid is currently set to true. We haven't done anything. In this case, we do have invalid stuff, but we don't have anything invalidating it yet. So we'll get to that, but we can see it's checking through all of them. So now we want to see if any of those are actually invalid, right? So here what we can do is we can say const field valid. And for the field valid, we can say is equal to validate field, just like we did before, and put in the field. And then we can check whether it's valid or not. So we can say if the field is not valid, so valid. So we're saying if so field, and remember the exclamation point is saying not. So if not field valid or valid field or whatever we want to put there for your name of it, we can then say that the is valid is equal to false. And now if I hit submit, if I submit here, we can see that, oh, now we're getting all these invalid fields and we have the error that's coming up at the end here because of all those mistakes that were happening. So let's just go through and double check. It should be, if we come in here, we fill these out, let's put an email address and put a message, but I don't push my consent and I hit submit, or let's clear that actually and hit submit. And if we come and take a look, checking first name, last name, email, message, consent. And then we have one of those, which is our checkbox, which is for our consent here, is not valid. So then we're have an error and the field isn't actually submitting. Perfect. Now, though, if it's not actually good, we want to show some error messages, right? Because without showing any error messages, that doesn't really help us much. And to do that, we're going to come back up to where we're validating our field, because we're going to want to do this for every single one of the individual fields. So as it's looping through here. One really quick thing, actually, before I do that, just because when I explain that let can't or can change and const can't change, and then here I'm setting a const of field value, but that field value is going to be different for every single one of the elements. I know sometimes that's confusing for people. So the reason this is working is because it's doing a for each. So this const is the same for each one of those elements. So it does the loop once. When it goes through for my first element, it's getting the field value. It's never changing that, because when it does the loop a second time, it's a completely separate loop through it. So it's not getting that value and then changing it over and over again. It's getting a unique value for each one of the times it's checking. So I just want to explain why I can use the const there. All right, so let's go back up to our validate field here so we can actually add some error messages. And so if we come and take a look here, I've added my span of error message to each one of them. So we can come into here, and I tend to always put my errors in spans. If you want to do it in a different way, that's completely fine. We'll make it so we could do anything. So we're going to say const here, and this is the same reason, like this const will sort of be different for each field, but it's never going to change. Like the value we're assigning it here doesn't change. It's sort of the same here. Like this is always the same thing. I can't change this later on, but the values that are coming back from that, those can change. So here we're going to say field.parent element, and we're going to do a query selector. So we're getting the field itself. So if we come and look here, we're getting the input field. Then we're going to the parent element. So the parent element is the form group. And then from that form group, we can then grab this error message that's right here. So query selector, and we only want one. So just in case for some reason somebody had multiple ones, we can just do a regular query selector and put error message here. And I realized I made a mistake. I didn't name this. So we're going to call this error. I'm just going to put error element or error L just to be a bit shorter. This could be a div. It could be, you could always have it as a span. It's really up to you. But I'm just doing it as error message. So if somebody were to put a div in there instead of a span or whatever, it's not going to break anything. Or if it's a paragraph, it doesn't really matter what the element is. I just want to make sure they get the thing that has the error message on there. So I'll just say my error element to be safe. Maybe not the best thing, but you can enforce certain patterns here potentially, but I think for this type of thing, we'll be okay doing that. So when our field is invalid, which is what's happening in this part right here, what we could do is say that our error element text content is equal to, and this field is required or whatever we want. So this field is required like that, hit save. And now if I submit, this field is required. Look, it's coming up on all of them just like that. And even down under my head, we have this one here. All of them are getting this field is required because all of them are required right there. So let's refresh the page and let's fill 2 of them out and hit submit. These ones don't get the errors. It's only putting this field is required under the ones we want them to be. Very quickly, I am going to do one more thing while we're here though, because it's not really going to cause a problem, but I don't want to have any issues running into it. So I am going to open up the style right here in my CSS, and we're going to come all the way down to the bottom where all my form stuff is. And I'm just going to say, this is my error message. I'm actually going to do a display of none on there. So it's not in the page at all, except I don't always want it to be empty. I want it to sometimes be shown when we have a thing. So I only want it to be display none when it's empty. And so if we hit submit now, you can see they all show up. But if I refresh the page, like they're not actually there. We'll come in here and let's just add a padding of 1 rem and a background that is red, just so now if I hit submit, oh, that's if they are empty. Let's take off the display none. So refresh, they're all showing up on the page now. And then when I submit, they go away because they're no longer empty. But if one of them, we have to refresh. If one of them, that one there is, this one's currently empty, so we see it on the page. So it's actually there, it's just an empty element. So we can just say if it is empty, we're doing a display none. So it's not there, but it's waiting for us. And as soon as JavaScript is adding in the information, then it's no longer empty, so it will show up on the page for us. Now, since we're here, I'm going to also just come and say error dot error message color is our var red, which is a color I've set up just so we actually have them in the right color. And there are ways that we could style this in sort of interesting ways, because I do want to look really fast here. I know we want to focus on the JavaScript, but if we look at the error states that we have, when we're filling it out, we don't necessarily have the red until that error state is showing. So one way that we could handle that is we want the red border only if that's there. So if I did, we could do an input that's invalid and say the border color is our var red. and you see that's working. So if I refresh this, the problem with that is they're red until we filled them out. We could use a user invalid, which means that they've interacted with it. So they've gone in, they've done something, and they've left, and now it's becoming invalid. I'm gonna leave it like this because we're gonna do it. So if a user puts something and then leaves, there we go. The error message eventually we're gonna have it showing as soon as they leave the field, because I think that's gonna make a little bit more sense, and we'll fix up a little bit of other styling anyway. So I think I'll just stay like that. I was gonna do something a bit more complicated, but user invalid is probably perfectly fine for what we want to do. The last thing though relates to this here, where JavaScript is inserting that text in. And something that's really important from an accessibility point of view, which is really easy to do, is anytime you have error messages like this, and it's one of the reasons that handling error messages with JavaScript is a little bit better, is that we can come on here and put an aria-live is equal to polite. There's other options here for this, but what the polite means is that for screen readers, it's going to announce it only once they're not doing anything. So it's a little bit, it's polite. It will tell them, announce the errors to them, but it won't be overly aggressive with that. That's, if somebody has a better explanation, you can leave it down in the description. But basically, if they're continuing to do other things, it allows them to focus on what they're doing. But then when they're no longer active, it will let them know there are errors in certain areas. So on all of these, I will put our aria-live is equal to polite. And one thing that could be worth checking, and I'm going to do it for this commented out one here as well, what's important is if you just did a display none to a not display none, from everything I've seen, it won't actually announce it. You really need the content inside of this to change, and then it gets announced by the browser, or by the screen reader, I should say. So yeah, if not, we could actually do all of this with just some CSS. Though if you do want dynamic messages, that changes a little bit. We're not going to be doing dynamic messages in this, but we will be looking at how we can change the message that's coming on each one of the fields. We're not there yet, but we're working our way up to there. So yeah, we have that coming through. We have error messages that can show up. The layout here needs a little bit of fixing when that happens. Don't worry about that. We'll fix it. It's not complicated, but we'll come back to that near the end. But we'll talk more about those custom error messages now. So where we have those here, I'm just saying, actually, I'm going to take these console logs out. I don't think I need that one anymore. I'm going to take those. I'll leave these ones here at the end, but for now, I'm going to leave that other one out. But over here where we're validating our field, we could also replace this, or we could just leave this field is required as sort of a default fallback. So if the person doesn't take the time to put in an error, a custom error, we still have something that's coming in. Because on some of these, or actually let's go look at the design, because that would make more sense. Error states. This field is required, this field is required, valid email address, select a query type, this field is required, and thank you for contacting us. So this field is required would be the one that makes the most sense as a default. And then what we could say is, on the times where we actually want something else, we're going to put this on this side, and what we're going to say is field.dataset.error. And then we're going to put in 2 pipe characters like this. So it's going to take this. If it can't find one of those, it should use this. So now if I want to get one of those errors that's custom, I can come back. I go on the input because we are checking on the field. It's a little bit easier to get. If you'd rather get them on the error message, you could set it up to do that as well. But we can just go on the input right here where we have our, let's come up, let's find the email. I want to put it on my email message. So email, I'm just going to go right here and say data error is equal to please enter a valid email address. Hit save. So yeah, just the data error any you want, hit submit, and then we have this field is required. They're all saying it, except this one is a please enter your valid email address. So the other one that we did want to change, error states, is to submit this form. You know, I'm not going to put the whole thing, but we just to show you that it is working. Let's get, because right now, as you can see, it's this field is required. So once again, we can come on this one and say data error is equal to you must consent to us contacting you to submit this form, whatever error you need. And there we go. We can see that error is coming up. I did use Flexbox down here when I originally did this, and this is causing a little bit of a problem, but we'll fix up this, the last little bit of styling closer to the end, because it's not as on topic for what we're covering in this video, though it is important that we get things to look good if we do have error messages coming in. But now we do have these coming. Now, if you wanted to, you could come in with a few different options. So you could do things like when we're checking the validity. So in here, once we know that it's not valid, we could actually come in here and say something like if field validity, and there's different things we can check. So you can actually look for like pattern mismatch. You can also just say value missing. I think that's what the capital M, value missing. There are different ones that's in the same MDM article I linked to below. Should have the full list, and then you could come in with, you could have a set of different things with different error messages depending on what the problem is, and then have the generic one that follows up at the end as well. You have different options that you can do. Now with our radio buttons, we're gonna go turn those back on, and the radio buttons are a little bit different just because the good thing with the radio buttons, as long as they do have the same name, so these two have the same name on them, as long as one of them is valid, they're all considered valid. So as soon as somebody has checked one of them, that whole group is considered valid. So you won't run into any issues with it like going, this is valid, but this one's not valid because it hasn't been selected or whatever. I'm saying valid. We are using the validity. We're checking if something is valid, and it needs to be, one of the radio buttons needs to be. So as long as they all have the same name, you're fine. But the problem here is I don't have an error message that's with that. My error message is within the entire field set. And that's because the field set is what's organizing it. I'm not checking the validity of each independent one for obvious reasons, for exactly what I said just before. We want to check if any of them, you might have 10 radio buttons. We only need one of them, or you can, it's a radio, you can only have one that would be selected. So to be able to do that, and maybe you have this with checkboxes as well. A checkbox by default will look at them one at a time, but you might need to do something similar to this where you're going to go over a whole bunch of checkboxes that are in a field set, because it might be like choose 3 of the 10, right? You don't need to check off everything if they don't apply. And it also depends if these are required or not. But well, let's go and look at this where we have these radio buttons in our field set. And it's not too complicated, but when we're doing our validate field here, we want to check whether or not it is. So our error element here, we're going to say we want to check for a couple of things. So we want to check first or let's just come here. I'm going to just put this on another line for a second because we're still going to want that. But we're going to say our error element is equal to field type is equal to radio. And so we want to check whether or not when we get to the error element, it's going to say, is the field type a radio button or not? If it is, we're going to do one thing. If it's not, we're going to do another. I'm going to use a ternary here. I'm not a huge fan of them, but for something like this, I think it's fine because we just come here and we say the first one. So this first one is if it's true. So if our field type is a radio, then what we're going to do is go to our field and we're going to choose the closest field set, which just means get the radio button, keep going out until you find the first field set, because then you know if it's the closest one, it's the one that radio button belongs to. So we get the closest field set. Then we're going to do a query selector inside of that field set for our error message, just like we did before. So here we were looking, whoops, I'm in JavaScript world with camel case. So we're going to go in our field set and find that error message. But then the rest of the time, we want to keep what we had before. So we just put a 2 dots, colon, right there. So this is question. So is it a radio? Question mark. Yes, it is. It does this. If it's not that, then it's going to do this one instead. So I can hit save on there. And now, even though we have these here, if I fill out a little bit of this, we have an invalid one there, but let's hit submit. This field is required. And then I can come right here and hit submit, or no, I need to refresh still. We haven't fixed that issue. And then I can hit submit and this one is okay. Let's refresh again, select this one, hit submit, and we're not getting that error. But if we don't have any of them selected, this field is required is popping up here. So it's working perfectly. Now, next up right now, I was doing this when we're submitting, which is completely fine. And you could just leave it like this. It really depends on what you're building and how the process is. But another option that we do have is to also check, and I find it a bit better for user experience, is to check when the user's finished filling out that field. Just so they know there's a problem with it or not. So to be able to do that, and that was a little bit like that user invalid we had, whereas if a user interacts with something and then leaves and it's invalid, we're getting the red here. It'd be good to have a message telling them why that's actually a problem. So I'm going to do a form.query selector. And on this query selector, I actually want all. If we just did a single one, it wouldn't be very useful. And we're going to get all of our inputs again, inputs, and we're also going to get our text input. I'm saying it out loud because we're getting multiple, and our text area right there. And we're going to do a for each on those ones. So we're going to go through each one of those things and grab that input that we're looping over. And we're going to change this a little bit because we're going to have to handle the radio buttons once again a little bit differently. But for now, let's just come and say we have an input. We're going to add event listener. And the event that we want to listen to here is a blur. And I just realized we're not really going to need something different for the radio buttons because we can't click in the radio buttons and then leave and have them not valid. So I don't know if we're going to bother with that. But yeah, we're going to listen for a blur. And if we have a blur, we want to do something. So we can have an arrow function right here, and we're just going to validate the form, or the field, I should say. And we just have our input that goes right there. So if I come in here and I leave, this field is required. So same thing, I come in, I leave, please enter a valid email address. And so for like things like this, the email, maybe these ones, you don't actually, the best place would be for a password. And I know this field, this doesn't make much sense to have a password here. But say we just, let's just do a fast password, just so I can show you why this would be useful. So this would be like, please, password must be at least 8 characters. I don't know why it's always 8, but it seems to be always 8. ID would be pass. Name was our pass. Required is still there. But on any of these fields, you can put a min length. So we can say min length is 8, not 10, 8. And then we could have our data error is there, perfect. So on our password, if we did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and I leave, there's no error. But let's take some of those off, and then I leave, and it's not working now, and I couldn't figure out why. It's because I misspelled mislength. Length, like that. Let's try that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, and leave. Now we have an error, right? And if we did 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and then we leave, and now it's good. But we make that half the length, and then we leave, and it comes up. So password fields are probably the place where this is most useful, and I'll leave this in here commented out in case you're looking at the finished code. And you can even check for that with the validity that I was talking about before. So if you do want to check, I think it's validity like this, and you can check for, I think it's too short or something similar to that. But it is one of the things you can check for if you want to put in a custom message. And you can even have it invalid for other, you can put a pattern here. So pattern is equal to, and put regex in here, and it will check that regex pattern. And then you could say that, if you have a complex password or whatever, you can have it check for that as well. And remember, this is all client side. It's not perfect, but it's nice that we're doing all this before having to worry about anything else. Before the user hits submit, they can fix the problems that they've already made. Now we do have a problem is if you come in here and I leave, and then I come in and fix it, it doesn't go away right now. And the reason it doesn't go away right now is because while we're in here, the one thing we are doing is we are setting the error message right here, but we're never removing the error message. So if it is valid, the other thing that we're going to want to do, and we can do this for the same check that we have here actually, because we'd want to do it for both of these. If it is valid, so here, up here where we're setting this line where we're putting the text, we do need to get rid of that. So here we could just do the exact same thing. I'm going to copy this, paste this here, except here we're just going to put an empty string. And as long as it's an empty string, we should be good because then we'll have an empty field. So we come here, we leave, we're okay. If I remove that and then I go, this field is required, go in, and it's all working again. Make sure there's no space here because empty, this would not be empty. So if I came in, remove it, leave, and then I fix it, I don't think, oh, it is still working. I'm surprised. So I guess it's not passing that through. I didn't think it was going to work, but just make sure it's an empty string because one space, the empty doesn't see one spaces, or Chrome fixed it, but I wouldn't say has good overall browser support. Now with that done, that's a good thing. But what if, like, say you come in and you do this and then you don't want to put your last name, it says the field's required, whatever, the person ignores it, or you're not doing this, you're only doing the validation on submit maybe. We have an invalid email address. We don't even fill this out, or maybe we do that where we don't even fill this area out. So let's put an address in here at Let's leave it like this, right? So right now we don't see any error messages. If I hit submit, and now I'm getting these pop up. One thing that we can also do is we can actually focus on the first element that is invalid, which is kind of cool, I think. So it just brings the user to where they need to start working. So down here where we have like our valid, we're doing all this checking. If the field is invalid, what we can do here in our else is we can actually do a form.query selector, and we can look for invalid. And we know in this case, we're always going to have an invalid one because is it valid? It's submitting. If it's not valid, then we're going to go find it and we're going to focus that element. Focus, got to spell it right, just like that. So let's say this one's okay, this one's okay, and let's just leave it like that. I'll refresh 1 second. So we do a KP, and then I come in and hit submit. You can see I've already focused here because it's going and finding, and I'm doing a query selector, not a query selector all. So it's going to the first element that is invalid. So then I come here and I put in my email address, right? That's not my email address, but let's say it was my email address. And then I choose my query here, and then I hit submit, and now it's automatically focusing us down here on this area. So it brings us to the last place that we haven't focused in. Now, the one thing I'm not going to talk about is actually how to handle the form submitting. And that's for another day. But we're just sort of focused on all the things here. But one thing you can do here is on this one, on the is valid, you can do a form.reset, just because usually when a form is submitted, so say we come in here and we fill it all out and it actually gets submitted, .com, we have this, we've consented, we hit submit, then you're sending it. So before you reset it, you would, send form data. However, you need to be handling that. It really depends on the use case. But we can send our form data and then reset the form just so it's not populated. We could also have a success message pop up or other things like that. For now, though, all I want to do is worry a little bit more about the styling of these. So this doesn't happen because this is driving me absolutely nuts. We will have some shifting going on just because you don't have to necessarily. It depends very much on your error states that you have, but I'm following the design that we have here where the error state is always underneath. And if I look up the desktop design and the error state, the fields are all moving to make room for them. The reason though, the problem here is because I'm using grid for these, it's the grid cell here, like my grid has gotten bigger. Let's turn this on. We're going to do a little inspect here and make this a bit bigger. And so you can see that's that grid. I'm going to turn that grid off and we're going to go in first name. And the first name grid has gotten way too big because it's stretching to match the height of what's happening on the other side. That's this one actually I want. There's that grid, and then here's the other grid on this side. This side needs room, or it needs this third column. So this one is stretched to fit that space because they're also both children of the parent grid. If I turn that off, and I look at the major grid, like this entire cell has got bigger, so it's stretching everything. Very easy to fix, luckily. So I'm going to save everything along the way here, and we're going to go over to my styles, and in my styles, all I'm going to do is find my form group, display grid, and I'm going to come here and do a grid auto rows, and I believe a min content will do the trick. So let's just try it out and see. That would be valid. I should have gone in and done something. And there we go. The auto would allow, like normally the auto rows are set to auto. So the sizing of the rows, like they all want to stretch to fill the available space. And just saying min content means stick to the size of the content that's inside of that. And it just keeps everything closer together. So there is like a layout shift that is going to happen when the error fields come in. And there's nothing we can do about that based on the design that we have. So if I come in here and I leave, it's going to get bigger. But just because of this section up at the top, I think that was a sort of important part to handle right there. Now, the one thing I haven't looked at here is once we've submitted having a success message or anything like that. So if you do want to look at some options there, please let me know in the comments and I'll continue this series with that. And if it's not something that a lot of people are interested in, then maybe I won't bother with it because I don't think it's that complicated. But if it's something a lot of people want, I'll definitely look at adding a success message in there, and we could look at some different options too. So please do let me know about that. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see the styling of it and you missed that one, it is right here for your viewing pleasure. And with that, I would like to thank my enabler of awesome, Johnny, as well as all my other patrons and channel members for their monthly support. And of course, until next time, don't forget to make your corner of the internet just a little bit more awesome.